if there's one thing I don't like, it's tiered citizenship. One thing that raises my blood pressure, it's different layers and categories of citizenship based off of who the citizen is or the method of acquisition. But unfortunately, it appears to be a reality, in fact, at least when it comes to third country treatment of citizens. It hasn't really been that much of an instance where the country issuing the citizenship, at least in the CBI world, explicitly tries to distinguish different types of citizenship. But that's what we're here to speak about today because of what happened a couple weeks ago, June 29th, 2026. By the way, my name is Parviz Malakouti Fitzgerald. I'm an immigration and citizenship attorney, and today is July 13th, 2026. Welcome to our 70th Mobility Space. Today, we're going to talk about different tiers of citizenship, both in the context of the news that came out about Vanuatu signing the Nakamal agreement, as well as the concept generally and where we think this is going, where we think it's going specifically for CBI and CBM. So for anybody who doesn't know, on June 29, 2026, the prime ministers of Vanuatu and Australia signed something called the Nakamal Agreement. It's an economic and security-based treaty between the two countries. There's 13 articles. The article that caught my attention and the attention of, I think, a lot of other people in the mobility industry was Article 6, which states Vanuatu shall develop effective mechanisms to differentiate citizenship by investment from other forms of citizenship. Okay, so that was picked up, that was commented on. I think it's a terrible development. I think it's a horrible precedent. I think that that distinction only spells bad things for individual CBI members. But of course, we're going to talk about other aspects of it. We're going to talk about whether anybody thinks this is a good thing, whether this was a necessary thing, possibly for Vanuatu citizens to maintain international egress and ingress to the country, given that Brisbane and Sydney are two international airports that feed international flights to Vanuatu. They're at least in the top 5. They might actually be number 1 and number 2 in terms of airports that feed Ni Vanuatu citizens, Ni Vanuatuans to Vanuatu. So Australia has and had, I think it's safe to say, some significant leverage on Vanuatu. And I want to go over a few things. We'll go over the Nakamal Agreement. I want to go over a few quotes in an IMI article. There was a quote by a CBI agent that said that this is a good thing, okay, ushering a new tier, elevated tier of citizenship for Ni Vanuatu citizens by investment. And then there was an opposing quote by a CBI agent that said that this is something that he sees as disastrous, as a precedent in a bad way. It's going to definitely cause discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to talk about those two quotes as well as competing incentives, let's call it, by different people in the mobility industry to spin this news or to ignore this news or to basically comment in a way that's possibly biased. So anyway, we got Patrick here. We got Alex here. Alex hasn't been around for a while. Welcome, Alex. And Patrick, did you get a chance to take a look at Article 6 of the Nakamal Agreement?
I actually have not yet, but I did. I have been. I have seen the headline components of it and some of the news article coverages of it, and then I know the specific 2 different CBI agents to whom you are referring to. So I think I have a sense of it.
Look, the article has 3 portions, and literally the portion related to this issue is 1 sentence. Vanuatu shall develop effective mechanisms to differentiate citizenship by investment from other forms of citizenship. Okay, first question. We got a lot to talk about here. By the way, everybody knows the rules, which is basically everybody can talk. Anybody can talk. Just come in anytime you want. Don't wait. You don't have to wait for an invitation. Patrick, first question to you, okay? Do you think that this is a good thing for Ni Vanuatu citizens by investment? Okay, and we'll differentiate a little bit, at least for now. Let's talk about it first from the perspective of Ni Vanuatu citizens by investment, and then we'll talk about the greater population. Do you think it's a good thing for them? Is it neutral or is it bad?
Yeah, I would say generally it's for existing Vanuatu citizens. I would say it's neutral. I would say overall to the concept of citizenship, I think it's bad. I can understand where people might think it's good, but I think that's a pretty short-sighted perspective. Um, I don't think there's an old adage that you shouldn't have to qualify something, right? You shouldn't have to qualify justice as historic justice or social justice or right. It should just like justice is in fact justice, right? And I think that's true with citizenship. Whether or not someone is, if they say, oh, they're an economic citizen, I mean, that's basically, that is still is naturalization, right? And if you dilute citizenship to the point where you're having to qualify it with some type of descriptor based on how one obtained it, I think it dilutes. I think it's one of those situations where, a rising tide doesn't lift all ships. It's a lowering tide lowers all ships, all ships. And I think that's the case here because there is, at its core, there is no real benefit in the long run to qualifying someone's type of citizenship. And I hate to use this example, but there does sort of exist a little something like this, right? The difference between a citizen and a national, right? Generally, it comes down to like taxation and voting rights, right? It kind of qualifies someone's citizenship, whereas in this case, defining how they obtained it, I think is not particularly. There's no real particular advantage. I know people, there might be some promoters of CBI who are like, oh, this is a good thing. And they see it as kind of like this trophy, right? Oh, this person had economic citizenship. It means that they have resources and they contribute to the country. Therefore, it's like this benefit. But I don't, there's no real reason why that would be the case because the benefit is in fact an individual's right as a citizen, a newfound citizen. It isn't going to be because of some label that qualifies their citizenship. And so, yeah, that's I kind of hit a bunch of points there, kind of a scatter approach, but I'll leave it there for the opening salvo.
Yeah, let me touch on something you said about CBI agents. So, I don't believe there's many or any CBI agents who think that this development is a good thing for the individual, okay, for the citizen by investment, who's supposed to be the client, okay. I think some CBI agents think that this is a good thing for the industry. I think they think that this is something that's going to keep the golden or the golden cow or the golden goose, excuse me. I think a lot of them think that's something that's going to keep the program open, alleviate a little bit of pressure, alleviate a little bit of stress, okay, and keep the citizen in name program going. Okay. Anyway, I think there's a diversion here, okay, in interest, okay, of the CBI agents versus the citizens by investment. Okay, what's good for the CBI by the citizenship by investment citizen, okay, is to have a gray man citizenship. It's not to have some sort of easily graspable collar put on their neck that any country can yank and say, okay, this person's a citizen by investment. But for the CBI agent who's pumping out however many citizenship cases by per year, okay, this might be a preferable outcome for them for their personal interest because the program survives. Okay, maybe if this program dies, okay, or takes a huge dive, okay, maybe they lose half or a quarter or 75% of their volume of their business volume. Okay, so I don't think. I mean, I don't see. And if somebody wants to come out here and take the opposing view, I'd be happy to hear it. But I don't see how somebody could think that this is good for the CBI agent. I'm sorry, the citizen by investment, unless, and I'll make one carve out. Okay, unless there was some looming consequence. Okay, that was from Australia that was so dire. Okay, that it was going to absolutely destroy the value of citizenship. For example, like a total travel ban, for example, on Vanuatu citizens to the country or something like that. So yeah, I mean, call me a pessimist, call me negative, but I think CBI agents, many of which who are serving Vanuatu, who call this a good thing, are I don't think they're being honest. I don't think they even think that this is a good thing. Alex, what do you think?
Well, I would think it's good for the industry and good for future citizens. The reason I say that is that the industry is kind of taking off post-COVID, so not that old of an industry where it's reached a little bit more of a mainstream audience. And most of these people don't really know what's going on or the trade-offs, and thus they're not able to really have informed consent. The more that the true situation becomes clear, the more that they can really consent and buy the right package for them. Because up until now, it was easy to sell the Caribbean citizenships because they have Schengen and you can get a passport and citizenship that takes you to Schengen. A lot of people at the time were questioning sustainability of that, and now finally it's clear. There's articles out if you Google it now that Schengen may be taken away. So these things that many had predicted were coming, actually arriving, is useful for future applicants who probably weren't going to do that much due diligence, just asking pros and cons to their agent or Google or now.
Okay, Alex, we can't hear you while you're working to get back up. I'm going to respond to what you said partially, and I know probably you have more ways to qualify what you said, but I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think what you're describing is a silver lining of a negative thing happening, a silver lining of losing the benefit or having the benefit be degraded is that, yes, people are going to do more diligence, but that doesn't mean that the development is a good thing for the person. To draw, an analogy, okay, and I'm just going to make it extra extreme just for the purposes of illustrating the point, right? If somebody were to lose an arm, okay, and then, maybe they lost, or let's say they lost a leg, okay, to diabetes because they were neglecting their health, okay, and then afterwards the person says, well, you know what? I lost the arm, but now I know to be careful of my health. Now I know to do the research, due diligence, research my health. I would call that a silver lining. I wouldn't say it was a good thing on balance that the person lost the arm or the leg. And here, I do agree with you, Alex, that it might be a good thing for the industry. And that's why I said in the beginning, like, we have to really be, we have to know where interests and incentives lie. Okay. And this is one thing that bugs the hell out of me about some CBI agents, not all. And I work with some CBI agents, right? Like some CBI agents serve my clients, obviously. But a lot of CBI agents, in my opinion, are content to let the market, both individual and generally, not really understand that a CBI agent is not their fiduciary. It's not their, it's not their agent. It's the government's agent. Okay, they don't mind that there's confusion on that point. Okay, for obvious reasons, right? So yeah, maybe the industry survives. Maybe the Vanuatu program survives or kicks on longer than it could have before. Okay, but I don't think it's. I mean, I don't see how this development is a good thing for a citizen by investment. I don't think it's good for a citizen by investment who's, for Vanuatu that's already existing. I don't think it's good for future ones either. I see it across the board, maybe to slightly differing degrees, but I see it across the board as a negative for either. Okay. And let me go into a little bit more detail about what I think is going to happen. Okay. Or what I think can happen. Okay. More easily as a result of this. And then what I think is going to happen. Okay. So we know by now, we've spoken about this ad nauseum. I mean, I am a broken record on the concept that all your benefits of a citizenship, okay, if there's springboard benefits, meaning that they offer you some sort of mobility outside of the country of citizenship, okay, it's dependent on the foreign country recognizing the citizenship and recognizing the benefit that flows from the citizenship. Okay, so there's there's reliance on two parties, okay, for a citizen to exercise a springboard benefit. Okay, so visa-free access, obviously, at the top. When you have a situation where a citizen by investment can be easily identified as such, okay, all the things that foreign countries want to screen for, okay, in order to either put a person into greater vetting, to exclude them from visa-free access, to exclude them from getting a tourist visa, period, okay, or to exclude them for satellite residency rights, okay, whatever. All of that is made easier, way easier, okay, when the country that's issuing the citizenship puts into place an apparatus that distinguishes the types of citizenship, okay? Now, foreign countries, even before this, foreign countries can still distinguish on their own, and they do distinguish on their own. We know that, obviously, okay? The perfect example that I bring up time after time is the E2 investor treaty that the United States offers, okay? In 2022, the United States said, we no longer want to offer this to citizens of E2 investor countries when that person got that citizenship by investment. So what do? They changed the definition, the United States did, in the Immigration Nationality Act for an E2 investor treaty applicant to explicitly exclude those people who got the citizenship by investment. So we know that foreign countries can do their own exclusions. Okay, they can look past, they can do their inquiry. It's very easy. Okay, it's no problem. I've had some people pop up in the spaces before and say like, well, how would they know? It's really easy how they know. They ask you on a questionnaire, and if you lie on the questionnaire, they put a 10-year ban on you. Okay, and there's a million other ways that they can know. So it's very easy for countries to find out, okay, what the basis of your citizenship is if you're trying to request a benefit from them. So countries already do this, okay, but it took effort, it took friction, it took time, it took money, it took an apparatus by the foreign country to get to the question of the basis of the person's citizenship, okay? That's the change that's being made here. That's the threat. That's the delta, okay? Now, if Vanuatu implements what it says it's going to do with the Nakamal agreement, okay, it's taking away all that work, okay, that previously a foreign country had to do, okay, in order to maintain the bilateral relations, the diplomatic relations with the foreign country, not spoil it by saying, all of your citizens are not welcome to this benefit, okay, because really we're just trying to get to the citizens by investment or citizens by merit, and I'll get to that later, okay. The foreign countries had to implement this apparatus, okay. Vanuatu's claiming it's going to do it for them now, okay, and this is done obviously in the context of Australian-Vanuatuan relations, but once the apparatus is there, the label is there, the brand is there, the distinction is there, there's absolutely nothing that stops the United States, the UK, the EU, any country that they want, okay, that Vanuatuans want to have any type of mobility benefit in, from visa-free access to whatever, to even just a simple passport recognition, okay. Nothing stops those countries from using that distinction, that label, okay. So it's a terrible, I mean, I'm not on the fence about this at all. It's a terrible development, okay, for long-term benefit of Vanuatuan citizenship, in my opinion, okay, by investment, okay. Do I think all of this is going to come down like a tidal wave at once? No, I don't think so. I think these little disabilities and discriminations are going to trickle out. I think we're going to see the first of them within 2 years, which I consider a pretty short timeline, given a lifespan that a person has when they get one of these. And I think it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts, right? So I think for a lot of people that are following this, they might have to really follow very closely to understand, okay, what was the status, what was the mobility status of a Vanuatuan citizens by investment in, let's call it this year, 2026, even after losing Schengen access. What was it then across around the world, as opposed to what was it 10 years from now? Okay, let's say 2036. And I think, they're going to come out in a trickle, different countries, different unions, in their own, at their own pace. But I think when you compare the status of that person today versus that status in 2036, is going to be pretty crystal clear that they're going to have to jump through more hoops, more obstacles, and have more difficulties. Now, I still don't think that this means that Vanuatuan citizenship by investment should be totally off the table for somebody, okay, that's looking for citizenship by investment. I'll get into that a little bit later. I still don't think this is across the board a deal breaker. I'm not saying that, okay? I think that a lot of other programs are going to be subject to similar types of pressure to make this distinction. And I presume that some of them already are, and we may not know about it yet. It may not be reported. But if you look at it through the lens of the citizen by investment for Vanuatu, I think it's unequivocally bad. If you look at it through the lens of the CBI industry, okay, there's an argument that it's good, okay, and it might actually be good, okay, and there's also a counter argument, right, which is that the more the market becomes informed about the reality of this disability, like Alex said, maybe the more people are going to turn away from Vanuatuan citizenship by investment. But right now, the general market knowledge is extremely, it's not just the market knowledge is extremely low about what it means to have citizenship and what these benefits mean. The level of knowledge among the service providers is low. It's the people who work in this industry have I'm speaking generally, of course, right? There's some people that are very well informed, but generally the people who sell this stuff have a very, very low level of knowledge themselves. as that level of knowledge rises, definitely the market applicants are going to be way more discerning about what citizenship by investment is right for them. I want to ask David, if David can speak. I want to ask David his first thoughts about Article 6. David, can you tell us what you think about this? And can you argue the basis? Can you argue the other side for us, David, the devil's advocate, that maybe there was something worse looming for everybody in Vanuatu if Vanuatu didn't acquiesce to this?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with Article 6 in particular, but
it's just the line that I said. Vanuatu shall develop effective mechanisms to differentiate citizenship by investment from other forms of citizenship. Article 6 is the article whereby Vanuatu commits itself in the agreement to put those distinguishing mechanisms in place.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any good way to play devil's advocate for this one.
All right.
Sorry.
No problem. So you think this is a bad thing for Vanuatuan citizens by investment?
Absolutely.
What do you think is going to? Do you think other countries are going to start discriminating, withholding their benefits, springboard benefits on this basis?
I don't know about immediately, but over the long run, yeah. And I think the one silver lining, I think maybe Alex was trying to communicate this, and maybe you were as well in your comments to what he said earlier, is that hopefully the effect of this is that it brings a bit of it imposes a bit of responsibility on the consciences, at least, if certainly not a legal responsibility, but at least this should be in the conscience of mobility influencers and those who sell
the conscience
citizenship by investment.
The conscience. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully this has got them thinking, and hopefully it will mature the industry to some extent, and at least get some people thinking about what it is that they're actually selling. Whether that happens or not, I suppose is up to the individual, but at least this is a kick in the pants for mobility influencers. Hopefully it is. I mean, we've seen some come and go over the last year or two, and we've certainly seen mobility influencers, change their song and dance to the tune of whatever the new programs are that are being offered. And I think it's always going to be that way, but hopefully there's more awareness on the part of people who are shopping for citizenship by investment, and more awareness on the part of those who are selling it as well, or facilitating it. Yeah, whether that happens or not, who knows? We'll see. But I don't trust these people to have a whole lot of conscience about what they're selling. I think most of the people who are in this business are doing it to make a buck.
Yeah, obviously I agree with that. There is a way to make a buck though and still have a conscience. At least, maybe call me old school, but I still think that's the case. Yeah, I definitely think the market is going to become more informed about these things. And what I think, David, is citizens by investment need some sort of group, some sort of public interest group, some group that can assert pressure. Okay, because right now when they get screwed or jacked with, whether it be having their money taken because they were an eligible nationality, and then the country decides they're not an eligible nationality, but they don't get their refunds for 2-3 years, or whether it be because their country says we're going to now distinguish you. Okay, Australia forced us. Now we're going to distinguish you. We're going to put you out on a platter to be discriminated against. They don't have that much recourse in reality. The recourse that they have, to the extent it exists, is to complain, on Reddit or other forums, which is, don't get me wrong, it's very valuable for other people to learn about the pitfalls. It's a valuable thing that they complain for others, but it doesn't really help their own scenario that much. Okay, like they need a way to put pressure on. Okay, to put pressure. And I've made the argument, in my video, which I called the perfect CBI. It's a fictional hypothetical perfect CBI. I say that the perfect CBI should have 10 qualities, okay? And one of those qualities is legal recourse private legal recourse outside of the country's domestic legal system, and what I refer to as international arbitration, right? And I use what's called there's something called investment arbitration that's out there. It's not citizenship by investment arbitration, but this is a field that's been around for decades, and this basically gives recourse to private companies who enter into public-private partnerships with countries. It gives them the recourse to sue their partner when they think they breached the contract, right? And they obviously don't go to domestic court, right? Because the government can put their thumb on the scale, if not totally control the outcome. They resort to third-party binding international arbitration. Citizens by investment need something like that. They need something like that, okay, to keep the countries accountable for them, both throughout the application process, like, for example, not getting screwed out of the money, the money, hundreds of thousands of dollars being held onto and not processing the applications, as well as to maintain the benefit, in my opinion, after they get the citizenship by investment. Now, the numbers might not be there, the cohesion might not be there to have a group that's actually willing to pool some money and resources together and advocate for, on their behalf. But, to your point, David, going forth, a few years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years into the future, as the number of people who have citizenship by investment swells, that might be, there might be critical mass there, right, for that type of thing.
Their plight sounds kind of similar to that of Americans overseas who don't really have a great way of being represented. But it's even worse. It's even worse for citizens by investment because, while yes, in theory they could form an organization to represent them and their interests, they run up against this problem of citizenship privacy, and being a member and being associated with a CBI public interest group, has negative connotations for a lot of people who are citizens by investment.
That's right.
It's a giveaway for citizenship privacy purposes.
That's right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So their situation is even worse because the United States knows who a lot of Americans overseas are because of their tax filing status, for example. But citizens by investment, their situation is worse.
I agree with you that the citizenship privacy would be an issue, but I don't think it's totally insurmountable, right? Because you can put together an organization. Okay, the visible leadership. Okay, sure, maybe their citizenship privacy is going to have to be, let's call it, sacrificed on the altar of this issue, but the others can contribute, financially, all right, for hiring whatever advocates or whatever else. It's I don't think it's absolutely necessary that everybody that's part of the group would have to be part of, visible leadership. But yes, you're absolutely right. And that's another topic, right? That's kind of in its infancy, second citizenship privacy. I think little by little, people are coming around to, to kind of seeing the concept and perhaps valuing it. But I still think that's, to use a Patrick McFawn phrase, that's in its first inning as well, too, right? But, a big pressure point, in my opinion, is bad press. It's bad press, but it's only a pressure point if the press has enough reach, right? And unfortunately, I mean, Reddit threads and that type of stuff, valuable as they are, I don't think that has the reach, right? And the platforms, let's call it, okay, whether they be websites or people with big YouTube channels, or let's call it, publicly visible figures on this issue. I won't say 100%, but the vast majority of them, okay, they don't avoid speaking up because they don't know about the issues. Okay, they know about the issues. They avoid speaking up because one of two things: either they would be directly financially adversely affected, or because those involved, okay, that they have business partnerships with, are going to be negatively impacted. That's why they don't speak up. Okay, they're like they're affiliates. It's a lattice work affiliate system, and full disclosure, to an extent, I'm part of that system as well too. Okay, like you cannot really help or serve CBI clients really in any capacity without having some contact, right, with that network. So there's an incentive structure set up, right, and I don't, despite what some might think, I do not actually like personally, naming people, calling them out, but people who follow these spaces know that I think that there's a few actors out there that do things that are not that ethical, and unfortunately, some of them are very big. Okay, so I mean, this to me, to have an article where it's like, oh, some people think this is a good development for Vanuatu citizens by investment, and some people think this is bad. To present that like that's two, reasonable positions on either side. I mean, that to me is that's not in good faith. I mean, that's like, I don't know, that's like saying, oh, hey, should you have your head chopped off or not have your head chopped? It's just that's not reasonable. That's presenting fake opposition in my opinion. But anyway, oh, Alex has been trying to request. Alex is probably eager here because I responded to what he said, but only in part. And I know that's always annoying because sometimes a person objects to what what you're saying, and you didn't have a chance to qualify it. So go ahead, Mr. Ugorji.
Hello, I'm back. Yeah,
Welcome.
so I agree that the industry has a lot of issues, and I wonder your thoughts on how would it improve if not for situations like this. It seems to me usually the mechanism for improvement when the incentives are not ideal is for some bad thing to happen, which then makes the consumer more aware, and also the sellers have to differentiate their products more. So could this not lead to this and the Schengen issues in the Caribbean? Could this not lead to a wide range of new products that allow different people to get what they need, as well as the programs to have to be more robust for people looking for robust programs?
Yeah, it could. Pain is data, right? And pain does move people to action sometimes, more than anything else. So I don't disagree with you that sometimes it requires, sometimes there has to be pain, okay, to force difficult things through. But I think it's really important when we're talking about here to distinguish different parties. Okay, if you're talking about the CBI industry, yes, I'm much more inclined to agree with you there. If you're talking about an individual person who got that citizenship, okay, that has now been degraded by this new policy, I don't agree with you that that's better for that person. That there's this development, and this gets to the point of where I say, like, if you're a practitioner or if you're somebody that's in this industry, you should be clear about who your client is. My client is not the CBI industry. My client is not the government. My client is individuals who are looking for freedom of movement. Now, sometimes there's interests that align, and that's beautiful. We can all sing Kumbaya when all the interests align up between these three players. But when the interests are disaligned, right, an advocate has the duty to the individual, to the person, right? And it's not just because I'm an advocate. In general, I'm just a lot more interested in individual human freedom of movement, even on an intellectual level, even on a philosophical level. That's enduring. That matters. That's something I think we could talk about 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now. CBI industry is something that popped up fairly recently. It's not going to last that long. It's not.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
That it's not an entity that onto its own, on its own, okay, in my opinion, has deep value. It's an entity that has value because it serves a higher purpose, and that higher purpose is freedom of movement of the individual, in my opinion. But yeah, I just to be clear, Alex, yeah, I absolutely think pain leads to sometimes to change, okay, over the long term, right? But it doesn't. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good thing. It's, I take it more as like the silver lining track, right? Like I said, I don't know if you could hear before the example I used, but if something devastating happens to your health and you're disabled for the rest of your life, yeah, that could provoke you to take better care of your health, right? That's a silver lining. I wouldn't say that devastating thing was a benefit to the person, right? Strictly speaking.
Yeah, I think the Vanuatu people are the losers, but I think individual mobility is the winner. The more people understand about the issues of mobility, the more individuals can prepare for it, and the more that they can demand for things in the future. Right now, there's such a low understanding of citizenship and mobility and how it works. These cases bring more attention to it than many other things. I mean, how many people even knew that you could lose visa-free access somewhere? And now you see it in EU news, Caribbean news, major blogs are talking about it. And so I think as more people become aware of it, for me, if there was no CBI industry, I don't know if I'd be aware of any of this stuff either. It's because you can read these news stories that you think about all of the implications and interesting things going on.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Agreed.
And the most important thing I hope will happen is price changes. If the Schengen goes away in the Caribbean, if there's more second-class citizenship and the price can go down, that would be huge for mobility. If the people who have really bad mobility citizenships could buy a much better mobility citizenship for $20,000, $10,000, even if it was second tier, that could be quite useful, especially when you have things like descent that you can pass citizenship through. So let's say I'm not super familiar with Vanuatu, but I believe it can be passed on by descent, and the descent citizenship is normal Vanuatu citizenship. If that's the case, then you could buy this now less valuable Vanuatu citizenship for hopefully a lower price. You then pass it down to your kid, who's now a citizen by birth and can have the full mobility rights. So for many Vanuatu citizens that already have a good passport, it might be useful if they can pass their kid on an additional good passport that has Australia access. Even if they have a bad passport, it might be useful to be able to pass their kid on citizenship that has Australia access.
Yeah, I had an exchange this last week with somebody. It might have, I can't remember if maybe it was somebody on this call where I said I wonder if a secondary effect of this is that getting citizenship by investment is going to become increasingly a play that you make for your unborn future children, just for exactly for the reason that you mentioned, right? In those countries in which the child can get citizenship by descent and it's not quote unquote tainted by the label of acquisition through CBI, it might be a gift for your future unborn children. I see these again. I mean, I know I sound like a broken record here, but it's not a net benefit. It's a silver lining. I mean, to argue it's a net benefit, then I mean, Alex, would you say you'd be happy if your American citizenship started to be distinguished and your springboard benefits peeled away one by one because of the potential of that spawning change or more awareness? Like I doubt you take that position, right? And correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm happy for my American citizenship to be less valuable if it were to, say, eliminate citizenship-based taxation.
Yeah.
If there could be a larger net benefit that were to come out of it, then it's okay for me.
Yeah, but that's not the trade that's
Now,
that's not the trade that's on the table. We're talking about trading something real, okay, which is the non-distinction of the citizenship by investment right now for a possible future unsure chance at a benefit, right? That's totally different. So it's not like somebody came here and said, "Hey, we're gonna degrade your Vanuatuan citizenship this way, but we assure you that this XYZ is going to happen." No, we don't know if XYZ is going to happen. It might happen. It might be stimulus that creates new programs or creates a price war. We don't know that. So the real trade would be, hey, Alex, are you okay with having your U.S. citizenship degraded? And maybe down the line, it's going to have these secondary, tertiary effects generally on mobility. I doubt you'd say that you
if
agree with
it's
that.
degrading for no benefit, then I'm not in favor of that.
Well, that's what we have
But
here.
I don't think that's the realistic option.
Well, that's exactly what we have
Usually
here.
there's some cause and effect, right? The fact that we're talking about this is an effect of what happened. And I don't think we're the only ones talking about it or the only ones thinking about it. Now, it's possible there may be no legislative or legal effects that come out of it, but I would be very surprised if all around the world, countries that are in CBI or considering CBI aren't thinking about how they can leverage this opportunity. to distinguish themselves and their programs.
Okay, what benefit have Ni Vanuatuan citizens gained from this June 29th Nakamal agreement?
They gain clarity.
Okay, clarity.
There
That they're a
may be
second-class
some
citizen
that,
now.
yeah, but they could be a second-class citizen in the future. So if you had just assumed everything was okay, no, they'll never do that, we don't need to make any plan Bs, this one citizenship is enough, we can renounce our US citizenship, become Vanuatu, and we're all good. We have a residency in Dubai and we'll be fine. But now people in this situation, as they read it, they'll get second additional plan B citizenships, and they can make those plans that before they might not have.
So you would be okay with your citizenship benefits being degraded now because it would stimulate you to have a plan C or D, correct?
If my citizenships are likely to be degraded, then the sooner it becomes clear. I mean, for me, I would already prepare for these things anyways. So it's, in my particular case, is less useful, but I think in general for most people, knowing that something's going to go away sooner rather than later gives you more time to plan. And this is a wake-up call to both the Vanuatu citizens and every citizen around the world that your government can just create a new class of citizenship, which is true in many countries. This is possible, right?
You wouldn't take the wake-up
Not
call.
just-
In your instance, in your case, you would not take the wake-up call as a deal to lose benefits of your citizenship. But you're saying for others, it's good. That's what I'm hearing from you.
I'm saying I don't want to degrade with no benefit. Everyone would agree. But if the degradation is going to happen,
I think he's saying if we know that the degradation is going to occur, it's better to know sooner rather than later so that you can make plans sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what he's trying to say, but the problem is he's starting from the certainty of the future event that already happened. Okay, and then backwards reasoning. Okay, you don't know that it's certain that that's going to be degraded until after it's been degraded. So that it doesn't.
You don't know it's certain, but it's probability, right? I think all of us have been very concerned about the marketing of many CBIs, and all of these benefits are being advertised that are not guaranteed. And many were concerned that there would be changes in the future. And now these changes are coming. You're not surprised, I don't think. I'm not surprised. But a lot of people are, because they didn't know these would come. And had they known sooner, it would be better, right?
Yes, to an extent, but here's the thing. I think where we're disagreeing, Alex, is you're treating this distinction, this imposition of a mechanism to formally distinguish citizenship by investment as merely revealing the difference, whereas I see the actual imposition of this mechanism as a further degradation. Ni Vanuatuan citizens were better off before. Technically the Nakamal agreement, as far as I can tell, has not been implemented yet, but they're better off, even if there's a feeling among a lot of other countries, which we've spoken about ad nauseum. I speak about this all the time, that they're second-class citizens or that they shouldn't be entitled to springboard benefits. Even with that, in that environment, the Ni Vanuatuan citizens are still better off before their country imposes domestic mandatory mechanisms that distinguish between the two. The imposition of the distinguishing mechanism is a further degradation. It's not just revealing the degradation. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And I don't want to.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and so I don't want to go on and on with about this point, but the way I see it is, nobody wants to trade something solid for something from maybe. Okay, that's generally not a good deal. Now, obviously, you could say, okay, maybe the maybe is so valuable that it's worth the chance. Okay, fine. But when somebody says the Vanuatuan citizen is better off because this happened, because I think it's going to stimulate more CBI programs, stimulate a price war, it's going to raise awareness. Okay, that to me is saying that the person has traded a solid, something we know. I mean, if you agree with me on the citizenship being further degraded by this Nakamal agreement, they've traded something that is real, that happened, it's not perspective, for the possibility, for the theory that they might have secondary and tertiary, effects, right? Now, I deal with clients, obviously. I deal with people. There's not that many people that I know. I mean, definitely not clients that I know that would take that deal, that would agree with that to say that. I think it's easy to kind of have that position when it's far off and you're talking about somebody else's, but I think it becomes clear what the value of that proposition is. Somebody says, okay, how about you? Okay, now you can't go to Europe anymore as of tomorrow. You're happy, right? Because now this means that more people are going to be aware that visa-free access can be lost. I think 99 out of 100 people are going to say, no, I'm not happy. That sucks. I want my visa-free travel back, and I'll take my chances on learning or not learning about these pitfalls in the future. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And we don't have to go on and on. Maybe we just don't see eye to eye on that, Alex. But I think
I agree with you.
Okay, you agree with me. Okay. So to me, it's a negative. Now we can try to extract, and we should try to extract a silver lining out of it, right? By raising awareness. And I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? I don't think there's just that much appetite there's appetite. This is what I found. Like I tweet, I write, I make videos on these subjects that I treat the topics in some of my content at a very, let's call it philosophical level. Okay. How you should think about things, how you should categorize core mobility rights versus springboard mobility rights, that type of thing. And I also tweet just straight news. Okay, hey, so-and-so lost visa-free access today, right? So like if you put those two, types of content on a spectrum, right? Like one is much more like requires thought. It's like more giving like a framework to look at things that are useful to judge things by. And the other is just straight news. Hey, this program opened, this thing opened, this country lost citizenship by investment. I found that, there's a big appetite for just the straight news, right? Which is why, the news sites, the news video, new program, that's why they shoot up, they get a lot of views. And there's much less appetite for like the framework, which what I think is actually the much more important, useful, actionable information that, that can actually help somebody. You guys obviously are here, so you're probably to some extent interested in like the frameworks and the philosophical side, but my open question to whoever wants to take it is how much appetite do you see the appetite for the more technical stuff growing, or is it really that still 99% of the market wants the news and it's only going to be like the mobility nerds that really want to understand how this stuff works under the hood in order to make best decisions?
I don't know. But I do know that in the age of artificial intelligence, that the more information that's out there, the more good information that's out there, like what you've been producing, Parviz, is going to be extremely useful for anyone who's going to be investigating these issues for themselves or a loved one in the future. And hopefully that has a positive effect, whether they actually listen to these podcasts or not.
Yeah, could be. There's a strange dynamic out there, David. I mean, you got a John Richardson, you got an Anthony Parent, and they do decent, okay, for lawyers. They don't do bad in terms of like the audience that they get, but they got a tiny fraction of the audience of know-nothing mobility influencers who just post absolute slop, right? It's insane. I mean, you got like free, amazing expertise from John Richardson, and he'll pull a fraction of what I consider glorified travel vloggers will pull, right?
Yeah.
And I understand to some extent, it's a matter of bandwidth. Like literally, even though John is fantastic, John Richardson, and I don't want to talk too much about him here, but he is my inspiration when it comes to the principle of trying to take highly complicated stuff and distill it and present it in a way that most people can understand, but it still maintains actually the technicality. I think he does a brilliant job of doing it. But the fact of the matter is, still, in order to consume his content and understand it, and I think to a degree to consume my content and understand it, you gotta put some like mental energy into it. And people are trying to live their lives. Like not everybody's trying to. People are trying to pay the bills. Feed the cat, do whatever. People don't have, I think, as much time to like focus that much. I'd be interested, Alex. Maybe me and Alex will connect later on what it takes to educate the market, to pull the market away from crap peddlers, from nonsense peddlers, and put them onto the real deal info. And it's not, I mean, I think I put it out there, of course, not the most humble comment, but it's not just me. There are also other, obviously, like creators that put out like real, like useful content, right? And I just wonder what it would take, to really, not educate, but really to pull the market into like real content. You know what I mean? So who
Well,
knows? Maybe
I
that's a
I have
topic
some
for the future. Go ahead.
I have some thoughts on that, but it goes back to the point I think that you were asking or making, which is like what is going to drive people to better understand like these like essentially niche arguments, but in this space, which again is niche by itself as well, niche squared, Inception. Um, but I think in this scenario, I think there's a human element to this, which is that people they like to learn, they don't like to be taught. And on top of that, people tend to learn in a very reactive manner. Um, and I think that is especially true in the mobility space because, and I'll give you two examples. One is very self-serving. It's again Canadian citizenship, right? Which is I followed the court case, I followed the legislation, and that was 2 years in the making. 2 years is a pretty large window to learn something. You didn't hear hardly anything about this. It wasn't until maybe February or March this year when CNN Travel and Business Insider did a story that said, "Hey, you might have access to Canadian citizenship," and then everyone learned about it, and now they're reacting to it. So no one proactively learned; they reactively learned, and now both all of the institutions are backed up. 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago, IRCC came out and said citizenship processing times are now up to 17 months when they were 12 4 months ago. So it's not only people on the supply side that are on the demand side that are reacting. It's also on the supply side. They're reacting as well. They did not plan for the future and they're trying to learn as they go, just as everyone else is, right? And that's true with mobility assets. When the UK changed their visa policy and said if you're a UK citizen, you have to come to the UK on a UK passport. And there's like a bunch of retirees in New Zealand and Australia that were like, oh my gosh, now I got to get a UK passport for the first time in 30 years to visit family in London. And it's like, and to people like us, I mean, that's shocking. You would have a citizenship but not a passport. After 30 years of not having it, that seems crazy to me. But none of those people did that because they were proactively learning. They were reactively being taught because they knew they would get stopped at the airport. And so it goes back to the Vanuatu example. I think this exception is kind of a carve out because you have this enormous institutional force at ports of entry to Vanuatu, where between Sydney and presumably other nations that have major hubs in the area, and they're like, well, we don't know about this because we don't want to be liable for an unsavory character or someone we disagree with going through. Therefore, let's add a piece of information so that we can track this better, right? So it's like kind of a reactive response to other countries reacting to this as a phenomenon. And I think to Alex's point, like this is a growing market, this is a growing industry. Vanuatu was kind of within the CBI world, it was kind of an asterisk, an asterisk program because it was kind of outside of the Caribbean. It was kind of new. The country was small enough where they kind of, were a little bit clumsy sometimes with marketing it or, possibly doing the KYC. Now that it's gotten a little more routinized, there's more demand. They're trying to meet that demand, especially as CBIs are, other CBIs are coming online. And so they're reacting. And then suddenly the main reason they're selling that passport presumably is for mobility reasons. And then suddenly the two biggest providers of operational mobility, the airport hubs, are like, hey, wait a second. So I think there's this level of reactivity in this industry because people don't have good concepts of citizenship. They don't have a good concept of mobility. And so as it develops, people are kind of learning with the here and now, and it can be a little bit ugly, but sometimes something like this sets a precedent, and it's an unknown for the future.
I absolutely agree with you, Patrick, about, look, we're nerds, we're mobility nerds, right? So we're into this. Other people have other things that they're doing. The whole world cannot be expected to really understand all the shades and complicated technicalities of citizenship. That part I understand. The part that I'm a little bit, I guess, a little bit flummoxed by, is once the person's stepped to the edge of the rabbit hole, either because of just pure interest or because, let's say, they've decided, I want to get another citizenship. I want another citizenship or passport. So what do? They start Googling. They watch a video or they binge videos, from their, a few mobility content creators, mobility influencers. And then those people get led down this path, of understanding, like anything in life, they start building a structure in their mind, of what they think is knowledge about this topic, passport, citizenship, residency, visa, what do these things mean? How do they interact with one another? What's dual citizenship, triple citizenship? And like I've said before, I don't want to sound like I'm whining, but so many of them they build a tower that's just nonsense. It's crap. It's based off of repeated nonsense, untruths, right? And they make a decision. I mean, that informs their decision. The Henley Passport Index, right? Like, what does a person think? The Henley Passport Index would be a limited but useful piece of information if people understood in context, but they don't understand in context because of all these crap that's been fed to them. Passport equals citizenship. Passport strength means, how many countries can you go to visa free, right? If you looked at the Henley Index and just said, look, somebody give you a list and say, look, all this means is these are the number of countries that citizens of this country can travel to visa free or with ETA or visa on arrival. And you could consume it. You understood what each one of those terms meant, and you could consume that in context and not have a problem. But most people, and it is vast majority, do not actually understand. Forget about the technicalities. They don't know what a citizenship is. They don't know what a passport is. They don't know what a visa is. They don't. Even people, and it's a tough pill to swallow. You said something, Patrick. People like to learn, not to be taught. I've been there a million times in consults, and sometimes people bristle a little bit when I have to tell them, and I try to avoid telling them unless it's necessary, but sometimes it's necessary to advise them properly, that what they thought they knew, about this is just wrong. It's so riddled sometimes with mistakes that it's best to just forget everything they thought they learned and then just start from scratch and learn what these things mean, right? People don't like that, and not in consults, and definitely less so when they feel like they're being lectured to, right? So I totally understand that. Unfortunately, I don't think I've implemented that to the extent I do. Sometimes I do think I come off as like lecturing or like freaking proselytizing, and that's not good, for sending a message. People don't like to be proselytized to, right? You're absolutely right. So just my point of confusion is just I don't understand, like, once somebody's gone down that path or started down that path, like, people get led astray. Like, I think the majority of people get led astray, and I understand there's powerful marketing forces at play, right? People are able to wave a passport around and say, this is, the strongest this or the strongest that or whatever, and they sell something, right? The incentives are high. Anyway, so that's it. That's my last, I guess, little rant on that topic, and I think that's, I don't know how many other people are interested in that, but I would be interested in a space. Maybe not the next space, but a space down the line about how to steer the market away from scams and clickbait. Like, to me, and again, I've had pushback even by some colleagues, right, both publicly and privately. To me, the RBI, the Portuguese RBI, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, dilemma, fiasco, was a fucking scam. To me, it was a scam. not by the country, okay? A country, I think, didn't act good. They didn't act smartly, okay? But I don't think it was a scam by them. It was a scam by the fucking providers, okay? And sorry, I'm cursing here, okay? But Portuguese, there was never a path to a Portuguese quote unquote passport in 5 years. It never existed. Okay. That statement, which was repeated thousands of times, probably over 100,000 of times, okay, assumes there's no difference between citizenship and passport, assumes there's no difference between residency and citizenship. It assumes residency processing time does not exist. It assumes citizenship processing does not exist. It assumes passport issuance time does not exist. It assumes there's no such thing as risk of legislative change, okay? And not only is there such a thing, it's extremely common, okay? This is, if you deal with multiple jurisdictions for any period of time as a practitioner, there's nothing abnormal about a country changing its citizenship laws. And the default tends to be that they don't, grandfathering is for people who lodge an application for the benefit, not people who have the preceding benefit, residency, okay? That's not grandfathering. We see, the service providers that are under a lot of pressure, stress, and are probably about to be sued, okay, in some cases by people that they promised this stuff to, they say that there's this phrase that they've been saying. They didn't even grandfather, Portuguese government didn't even grandfather, okay, the nationality laws, okay, to residence by investment. That's not grandfathering. Grandfathering would be if somebody had lodged a citizenship application and the citizenship law changed en route. Okay, that would be grandfathering. Okay, those people should get it. Not somebody who has the residence. Some people even got residency without even necessarily wanting to get citizenship. They're not the same thing, right? So that was in my opinion, a scam. It was a scam, and I was totally on an island. I was writing about that forcefully from 2021. I looked it up as early as 2021, okay? And that was part of what led to the fallout between me and Christian Nessame from IMI Daily, okay? I wrote for the publication before. We were pretty much allied, but he kept pumping out this nonsense, 5 years to passport. And I even wrote an article, anybody can look it up, which is, it's called something like The Hidden Threats to Your Citizenship. And I wrote an article. I didn't explicitly name the Portuguese RBI program. I probably should have, but it was about it was kind of a principled argument, like we're talking about the principle and topic. And I wrote that these are the reasons you don't say 5 years to passport, okay? Because it makes people totally think that these things do not exist. And I wrote them out: risk of legislative change, risk of constitutional change, lawful risk of legislative change, risk of administrative narrowing, all these different things, okay? I published, I think, that one, if I'm not mistaken, in 2022, 2023. So I wrote about this, and I did also have tweets and I think maybe one article where I explicitly called out the marketing on the Portuguese RBI. My point is, and I'll wrap this up because I'm probably ranting and raving a little bit right here. For a practitioner, okay, and I don't think this was like some amazing insight by me, okay? I think probably if you're a dedicated ethical practitioner, multi-jurisdictional practitioner, okay, and you've been around for a little bit, you see that this is a risk, okay, that's possible that Portugal changes any number of things while people are on this long path from the time they lodge their residency application until, quote unquote, trying to get a passport. That was out there. Practitioners knew this was the case. Ethical, real practitioners, okay, in my opinion. But practically nobody. I mean, I don't think I can find one other person or writing that wrote something or said in an article like, hey, this is a risk of Portuguese residency by investment. So as a result, all these people got wrecked, okay? And like I said, the service providers are under enormous pressure. So now they've created this narrative, this BS false narrative, that it's all on the government. And don't get me wrong, I think that what I do blame the Portuguese government for is extreme delays in the residency permit processing. That sucks. Okay, that should not be the case. But that's also a reality of residency and citizenship. That's countries. We deal with that, the US. I deal with that all the time with USCIS. We deal with that with other countries. If you're an advisor or a service provider, okay, you got to tell your client, or you got to be honest with your client at least, okay, about the fact that these things exist. Nobody has a crystal ball to say for sure next year, the processing time is going to jump to 2 years. I'm not saying that. Nobody has a crystal ball. But if you're a competent ethical practitioner, you know that these things collapse and expand like an accordion. And it's relevant. It's highly relevant, okay, to the client, especially when the selling point is the timeline, 5 years to. Those people who were sold 5 years to Portuguese passport, for those who stay on the path, it's going to end up being 10 years, 11 years, if they're lucky, 12, 13, 14 years. Okay. Totally predictable. And I hate to be cocky about it, and predicted by me. Okay. The receipts are out there. Okay. I posted about it. So that's unethical. That's highly unethical. And that's what led to these people being wrecked. Okay. To a large degree. And I do think there's probably some small percentage of people who did their due diligence and understood that's a risk and they still wanted to take it. But I've had many, many conversations with people that were blindsided by Portuguese residents, by investment applicants that were blindsided. And I get the impression that it was a numerical majority that did not think that it's even possible that such a thing like this can happen. If the market is going to grow, okay, which it is growing, okay, not just our CBI, but the greater second and third citizenship market, okay, dude, we gotta steer people to truthful information, okay, and away from marketing slop. So anyway, that's my bit. Okay, we're at 12:08 p.m. We've been going for an hour and 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, pushbacks? Anybody want to come at me? We open debate here.
Yeah. I just say thank you for the silver lining point. I think you made it very clear that although it's good to look at the silver lining on things, the bad thing is still a bad thing.
My pleasure, and thanks for raising the point so we could flesh it out and explore it.
We should do a roast night one of these times where we roast a concept as opposed to just being intellectually thoughtful and conversational. What about it like a takedown night?
Mobility gripes are forthcoming, Patrick. And you know that we've spoken about that in private. I am going to start a series of mobility gripes. We're going to do them as YouTube videos, short videos, probably 10 to 20 minutes. We're going to pick a concept or something that kind of, some dynamic that people who travel or interested in multiple citizenship know about. And we're going to go ham. We're going to roast it. We're going to gripe. We're going to complain. We're going to make a clenched fist, raise it in the air, and shake it at the clouds and whatever else might be out there. So we're definitely going to do that. And yeah, maybe Patrick, maybe we do a space on it. I don't know. Is there appetite? What do you guys think? Do you guys want to do a whole space on roasting a concept or being less serious, making fun of ourselves?
It's good to sometimes not take yourself too seriously. So maybe it's in the deck.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We can't be all fire and brimstone. We got to be joking and laughing sometimes. Okay, I think that's it for this mobility space. I'll wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Patrick, David, Alex, Chris, all of our other listeners, including our anonymous listeners. I don't have a topic yet for next week's mobility space. If anybody has a topic they want to bring up, and David, I'm still putting your nationality versus citizenship on ice. We're going to get to that, but I'm not prepared, to be quite frank, yet for that. But if anybody has a topic they'd like to bring up, bring it up now. Otherwise, I'm going to decide and announce unilaterally, dictatorially this evening. Anybody have a topic? I will put my dictator's hat on and I will choose a topic for next space. Hopefully it'll be interesting. As always, remember, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time each Monday. These are our mobility spaces. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.